Hey Beach, Sam here. Just going to take you a run through the restringing of the Trekki 2 guitar. What I might do as well is replace this yellow paracord with either a yellow or a white, but I think white might look better. A new piece of white one, so we'll get rid of that as well. You'll by the time you watch this, you'll have the guitar, so it won't be unfamiliar to you, but just to kind of go over it very quickly for your information, we have here a chunky weight, I think professional toned electric guitar that you could take away and gig with. Get some sawdust out of there. There's the electrics in there. It's cozy, okay, but there isn't anything massively overly complex going on in there. It's just, as I say, a fairly tight fit, held in place by magnetic thingies. We've got 3 big hex bolt neck fitting, which comes undone with a key which I will supply you with, but it's a 5mm hex key, and it's just a good solid fitting. Goes into 3 threaded inserts in the neck heel there, and this is an upcycled neck, as you can probably tell. As we talked about, you've got a sapele African mahogany base. The cover there is Palfero, so Palfero cover, sapele African mahogany base with the reclaimed Ecke top, which is carved in that sort of violin German carve as they call it. And on top of that you've got the Chinese bridge, you've got Seymour Duncan and the unbranded or unmarked vintage DiMarzio, and that's about 14k and that's about 16k resistance. Then we've got at this end we've got the locking unit. Now I'll show you this. What's great about these guitars is you don't really need the locking unit, but they're there to secure the strings so they don't flop around and fall out. The strings are held, the ball end of the strings is held in this little unit here, and you can see, well, you will see that the cut end of the string, or the plain end of the string, will wind onto here, and I'll show you how that works. On this guitar, on these guitars, I tend to use this for replacing the strings. So it's got a 5mm hex socket, and I can gently turn that and speed up the process. The bridge comes with a cute little built-in crank that's magnetically housed in there, which you can use. You can also use that crank to tune the thing as well. I haven't can't think instantly if I've got often with these, and this one I didn't because I didn't want to fix it, but on many of these guitars I make a little extra. I'm probably going to find you one, but I make a little extra knob that sits in there for tuning those. It's easier than pulling out this little crank, but it'll do the job, as will this. You can do it by hand, and you can actually turn these by hand too, but they require a little bit of a vice-like grip. What you've got here is you've got 3-position switch, selecting between these, volume, tone, and the push button on this one controls a coil split on, a coil tap on here, a true coil tap, meaning this, pressing in this will drop this down to half of its coil length. So this is a single coil, true single coil. Taking this off will make it half the single coil. So it's just about reducing the output. If you're kind of in a, I don't know, you want to light it, or you don't want to drive the amp so hard, it's good for rhythm pieces and whatever. Or if you want a big differential between flipping on the switch from the neck to the bridge, you can leave that at half a coil, which is still 8k ohms, which is pretty big, and jump to a big boost there of 16. So you know, with this out, you're going from half to a big boost. So you'll figure it out. Anyway, so I'm going to hook you up on a little, while we're running, put you on a little stand, magical arm here, and I'm going to show you the process. Now the reason I make a deal about the string changing business here is because you've probably read in the intro to the guitar and stuff that these bridges I've chosen to use, and they're made in China and they're not made from incredibly strong steel. Now the disadvantage of that is that the steel is softer than perhaps a German made unit or an American made unit, but it's also about a tenth of the price. Okay, so I can put one of these on my guitars and sell them at a, you know, a humane price. Whereas if I put some American German hardware on here, or the top range hardware, it goes from about 45 quid this unit with the headpiece up to about 300 minimum for the next level. So you can see it would make a massive increase to the price. So anyway, the reason I use this is because in terms of tuning stability, it's incredibly stable. I haven't played this since I strung it up, and it's still in tune. This guitar has gold Evo frets on. These are at least three times harder than regular nickel steel frets, so these will last a long time. Jumbo frets. So the thing about the bridge, and the reason I'm making this video, is there are a couple of things you need to know to handle it carefully. If you were, let's say you were building a guitar with the bridge, the first place, because the metal is relatively soft, the first place you can damage it is when you get the bridge in the first place and you're putting it onto the unit, and you have to take it on a few times to get everything lined up and to judge the, you know, neck, pocket, all that sort of stuff in making. But as a maker, in taking it on and off and putting the saddles on and taking them off a few times, it's very easy, it's all too easy, to strip out the little holes, the thread in the little holes that hold these saddles in place. Now, having done that once in the past, I now managed to completely avoid it by, as soon as I get these bridges, I take them apart, grease everything up, and I know what to watch out for. So if you were ever to undo any of these little bits, I just say, my recommendation is, first of all, don't do anything without a dead sharp, clean, new hex key. I've got a little tiny one here for turning things. I've got one brand new here for turning these to get them moving if I need to. Okay. Anything rounded could strip off the little, the little piece in the top. Anything, if you're not careful, as you put the little, do any of the little screws up, or you take them out and put them back in, you can cross thread them, and before you know it, you've got a screw that's turning, and as a result, the saddle might not stay where you want it to, and so on. So rule number one is mostly for when you set it up, which is what I've done, is take care, because right at the beginning you can strip out those little screws. The main thing, that's not so much of an issue to you because I've set it up and it's where it should be. The next operational issue for you is when you come to use these little things. Now, in kind of machining and metal component parts, right? We're used to things being incredibly sort of solidly machined and everything being tight. These little units here, when the strings are on, they are pretty tight, okay? And you can, nonetheless, I'll just show you now. So we stick this in here and make it easier. They're stiff insofar as they don't wobble, right? Okay, easy to move, you just tune, okay? What you'll find is when you take all these strings off, these will suddenly seem quite loose, right? Now they are only held on by a little screw in the middle here, which hold it generally under a little bit of tension with a rubber kind of seal down there. And when you take the strings on, the first thing I'm going to tell you when you take strings off is you expect these to be loose, and that feels a bit odd because you kind of think you should tighten them up. Unless they're actually falling right off, don't tighten them up, because you'll notice that when you put the new strings on, they'll tighten up and they won't rattle or do anything. They'll be just fine when you play. So rule number one, avoid tightening these up. If you over tighten them and then tune them, you'll grind up the little brass gears inside here, and that's the only time this bridge has ever gone wrong for me. A customer did that, and that's because I didn't tell them about this. I think they possibly tightened these things up thinking, and you would, a kind of logic is to tighten them up. Okay, so let's go on the process of changing the strings. This is, as I said, this tuning stability on these depends on two things, and it's a normal two things. It really, on this, I would say normally on a guitar, the tuning stability is dependent on the quality of your nut slots, right? That's 50% of your tuning stability, and the other 50% is in the degree of unreleased slack in your strings. On this, because there's almost no string beyond the nut, okay, the majority of tuning stability, this is very good. It holds the tuning brilliantly. The thing you need to worry about or pay attention to is stretching the strings out when you fit new ones, okay? If you do what I'm recommending you do, you will get perfect tuning stability, and this will amaze you how long you can play for without even touching this, okay? If you don't stretch your strings out, like I'm going to show you in a minute, then you might blame this for the strings not staying in tune. It's not, it's to do with this. So keep that in mind as we go on. So to change these. I don't know, these might have been 10s, and in fact they're in pretty good condition, but I want to make this video, so yeah, these could have been 10s, but let's get rid of them and put new ones on so that we can go through the process anyway. So I take out my little hex thing. Either you do it by hand or I put it on a light, what's that thing, torque. And when you have the guitar, let's say you're at home and you don't have a rest, it sits on its own base quite nicely. These things tilted back a little bit, so you just want to hold this lightly and not ram it to a vertical, just let it sit in the plane that these little tuners sit, right? And then I'm keeping the speed as nice and slow. I don't want to over rev it. Okay, and what will happen is this little barrel or the little drum will turn around and gradually unwind the string until it reaches the bit where the string pops out, and then we're done on that one. Believe it or not, it's not that long if you're doing with the crank. I'll speed it up a bit. I was going a bit slow there. But okay, so there's our cut string, and we'll do all the others and then move down to this end. I'm not pressing down at all. I'm holding it gently, just letting the spinning part, the drill part, do the work. Okay, I don't want to press down. I just want to turn it. And that's all that's going on here. There you go. So I'm almost holding it like it isn't putting any weight at all on the actual bridge. That's quite important. Here comes that one. I'm going to get tangled up in the new strings. In fact, it's better to avoid pressing down on the bridge at all. Just keep you out of trouble. What I'll do is in between I'll put some oil on the fingerboard as well. There it goes. And finally, okay, so just to keep these out of here, that's that undone. Now, just to make the point, these now feel a little bit loose, varying degrees of loose. They're not all the same. Some of them are a tiny bit looser, and if you're kind of curious and you just want to feel, you can just put your screwdriver in there and okay, you can feel that just beginning to tighten up a little bit, as with that one. Maybe that one's a bit wobbly too. You can feel the point at which it will tighten up. That one's not turning at all, but you can feel the point at which it tightens up. You don't want to really, that's a bit too stiff. You just want to kind of, you want to have it loose. Even if it's flopping around loose, it'll still work really well. Better than if you over tighten it. Okay, so watchword is more flopping around than tighten. As long as it isn't falling off, you'll know if it falls off, it'll just sit there on the bench. Okay, so we come down to this end, and this end is pretty simple to operate. You get a hex key for these things here, okay, and you just do this. This looks like the standard sort of locking nut that you'd get on a heavy metal guitar, and these two ball ends come out like that. So we do the same for this too, taking them off. So the good thing about this system, because you can keep the ball ends involved, those little locking hats don't have to do the heavy lifting. They're not gripping the strings, unlike on some systems. The strings are being held mainly by the pull on the pulling on the barrels, if you like. So let's get rid of these. They're coils catching me. So I'll do a bit of oil in between. Like I say, my initial plan was not to stick with this type of bridge, but because on the first guitar that I made, that I put it on, which was my Oakcaster 16, which is in the Facebook page and under all my photos that you can kind of scroll through and see at some point if you're interested. I showed you one picture anyway, but the bridge I put on at Oakcaster 16 surprised me so much with its tuning stability, and I took it out and played gigs, and you know, unlike the other guys in the band were tuning left, right and centre, I could play the whole thing for nearly 3 hours, or 3 hours, you know, 2 1.5 hour sets, and only kind of check it just to be on the safe side in between the two halves of the set. And I just thought, for about £50 in cost, hardware cost, I just thought that was an incredible stability. And I thought, well, I don't really mind how it, you know, what it, the fact it's Chinese or whatever. For that sort of money, that kind of tuning stability was just such a bonus. So rather than worry about it, I just carried on playing it, and then I bought a couple more because I thought they were so good. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to take this bit of yellow, partly it's because it's a bit mucky, and we'll put a bit of new string paracord, and I'll kind of flatten or crimp off the end, not crimp, melt off the ends in a minute, so that it kind of looks nice. One end's been melted already. So I've made it so that the cord goes through this bit here. Now if you need to, you won't actually need to, but if you had to get to the truss rod at all, you could undo this end of the paracord and take it out if you really wanted to use your truss rod, because it's in the end there. But it's it's unlikely you're going to need to do it. Actually, you know what? This has worked really well so far. I'm not sure. Let's not change it. If you want to change it, save taking it apart. But if you want to change it, that's how you do it. You have a bit of a fiddle to get it through the hole, but you tie a knot in at one end and knot in the other, and away you go. It's not a priority right now. So having oiled the fingerboard, you've also got on here a slightly adjustable neck nut, and I'll put a little tiny hex key in. If you ever want to adjust it, you take your little tiny hex key. Oh, it's my son. I don't want to break this video up, but I can come back. Hold on a sec. Oh, beach, back again. That was my son. We're hatching a plot for me and Claire to go over and see him in Denmark. Haven't seen him for a while. Right. Okay, so where are we? We're ready to restring. I did replace the paracord, and I've melted the ends down so they're nice and secure. What did I do? I ran a bit of oil over the top of the guitar here, just to bring a bit of luster. I just checked the pickup. It is wax spotted, and there's still wax on the top of it, but don't worry about that. Proof that it was nicely wax spotted. Anyway, so here we go to restring. So we'll get the first pair strings out, and these are the 10 set, so as requested. And so what you do is you get your ball ends out, and it's a bit fiddly. No, just one thing while we're here. The adjustable nut, which comes with a tiny little hex key, if you ever want to adjust it, sits on two little feet which go into little recesses in the rosewood, and when you take the strings out, it just comes out. It's not glued in, right, but the pressure holds it down, and the little recesses stop it from moving anywhere. So just remember that. It might fall out if your guitar is on its side or something. So you get your first two strings and you hook them into there like that, over the top there like that, and just make sure they're seated in the basically the ball end is seated in there. All right, and then you put on your, where's the flat bit? Can't see in this light. That way. Okay, put on your little top hat, and then you just, that's the wrong one. It's that one. Just do it up. Now, like I said, sometimes you just need to make sure the string pops down into the little gap. And once that's on there, you can do it up, but actually it's better to just leave it loosish until we've got it attached at this end, and then we can make sure it's pulled right into there, so all the weight has been taken by the headpiece unit. So just only do it up enough to hold the strings in place. Then we get the, pull it off there. We'll get the next pair. So it's actually pretty straightforward when you've done it once or twice along the way. And for, like I say, for the tuning stability and the sort of brain off convenience, it's quite nice to, it's worth it. So those are in there, just held in the kind of nut slots, keeping them in position. Get the top hat, and then just try and get it just to hold the strings, if I can get it there, just enough to hold the strings so they don't pop out anywhere. Right, and then we'll come back. We must remember to come back and retighten that up, and then we go for the last two, the B and the E. When I made these guitars first time originally, I looked at a lot of the travel guitar designs, and a lot of them sacrificed tone and solidity for gimmickry. I thought, you know, folding things and things that would preserve a set of strings, so you just sort of unfolded the guitar at the other end. And because I wasn't really just aiming, I wasn't aiming at somebody for whom £3 worth or £5 worth of strings or whatever was a big deal, I built them from the point of view that there weren't going to be any of those sort of fold away gimmicks to try and preserve the strings. And instead, the customer I was aiming at was going to take a new set of strings for the duration of their vacation or their overseas gig or whatever. Okay, now this is the next important bit. So in other words, that it was no thing to put on a new set of strings, and it's actually what I did when I first took one of my own guitars away on our honeymoon a few years ago in the Maldives, and just took it in two pieces in the case, carry-on case, got there, took the strings out, put a new set of strings on, played for 3 weeks, and then came home. So when you put these on, you go at least an inch. In fact, with the fat strings, go to the back of the wood beyond the bridge. So it's about an inch and a little bit beyond, and then cut it. All right, we'll do it with all of these. I would go 1/4 of an inch further than that on the plain strings, okay, because they need a little bit more to wind on than the fat strings, which grip pretty quickly. So wound strings to the just around about the back end of the bridge, sorry, back end of the guitar, the wood, and then the plain strings just a little bit more than that, to maybe in total 1 1/4 inches, something like that, beyond. Well, I'm saying 1 1/4 inches beyond the bridge, but just past the end of the wood, about 1/4 of an inch past the wood, and it gives you that extra little bit of grip to wind on. Okay, so there's my spares that go in the bin. What should I say? The wood recycling. So here's the fun bit. So you've got your strings, you've got your doing up thing. On low torque, remember when you put it in, you avoid pressing down on the bridge at all. Now this is the bit that I can't show you up close because you'd never see it anyway. Each of these little saddles has a little brass drum, and the little brass drum has a little hole on it that you poke the string through to begin the winding process. So hold on a second, sorry about that. Come over here, see as much as we can see from here. There's only a limit to zooming in, this thing will do. So what we do is you start with your first one and you turn it until you see the little hole kind of pointing kind of that way, or maybe horizontal if you like, across the thing, and you poke your end of your string through it and turn it a little bit further and poke it through until it comes right the way through, and then you'll see it sticking out about 5 mils. Now on the thick strings I recommend you just pull them back a little bit so there isn't so much hanging out the back, and then just hold them under tension so they don't pull out again, but as it starts to turn it'll sort of lock back on itself and grab hold, and you've got the string going onto the drum with not too much coming out the other side of it to begin with, just to get in the way. And there we are, it is on. Now I'm going to let it when these are all on, I'm going to undo all of these, let this take up the slack, and then I'm going to tighten all those up at the end one final time. So again, we go with the A string. Again, don't press down, just hold the thing above and let it turn the wheel. Right, now come through, back a little tiny bit, let it come round, then put it under tension once it's gone round a bit, and that holds it in place. I'm kind of almost picking up the guitar to keep this under tension. No harm in doing that. That just keeps as much slack as possible out of the whole system. Make sure it's going through the nut in the correct fashion, which it is. Come on, 3 strings out of the way for a minute. Okay. No, they're not behaving. Wound. Okay, same here. See how much that moves? That's fine. Absolutely fine. So through, back a tiny bit, let it go round, gently tension it and hold it. And once it's gone round and bit it, you can hold it quite tight. Again, still don't press down, keep the screwdriver floating if you're going to use it. I recommend doing it that way. Most of us have got a what we call it, powered driver, but let's say you wanted to use the little crank. Okay, put the crank in the top there, spin it round until the little hole is almost horizontal, just pointing up a little bit so you can see it. Feed the string through. Now with the plain strings, let it go all the way through until it touches the back. Don't try to pull it back or else it will slip out, and it doesn't matter to have a little bit of excess string poking through there. And so there you go, we're just winding the crank on, and actually you can see that this is, in a way, it almost seems easier than using the screwdriver, partly because it's taking up a bigger turn. So that's how you can do it with that. It's perfectly adequate to do it, and you know, they had a clever little design when they did it, these Chinese. I'm going to do this because it puts a little bit less pressure on the bridge. That's mainly it. Again, on the plain strings, go all the way through till it hits the back edge, come round, and don't worry about pulling it back, just let that spare bit fold under. And round it comes. And finally, the top here. Remember, don't worry about the loose turning things here. They tighten up once you get the strings loaded. All the way through. And that's that. So if you want to tune it using the you only have the crank to tune it with. What I would do now, this is the critical bit, is first of all, now the strings are on, I would just gently hold them and pull them and seat them, right? So we're just doing that normal thing of bedding them in a little bit, okay? And you can feel it giving quite a lot at this point. Obviously careful not to snap them at this level. Make sure they don't all drop off the saddles down here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to undo these a little bit more, just to allow everything to move, okay? And with my little hand crank, just going to do these up a bit tighter, just to begin with. I'm not really thinking about the tuning or anything. I just want the strings under tension. Just for now, I can adjust the actual pitch later on. And this point, as I'm just tensioning it so that they're pulling onto the head end properly. Okay. Now I'm happy with the fact that they're under tension. Now I get my thingamajig and I just tighten this up. This is just a restraining screw, so you don't need to put massive locking pressure on here. It's not going to affect the tuning at all. So not like some of those, like I said, that you have to use all your force to keep the strings in place. It's not like that. Okay, so having done that, this is the bit that's going to make your guitar play in tune, and I put an emphasis on this all the time in my videos, is to get each string and push it and stretch it between thumb and forefinger, and you'll feel slack coming out. Okay, and just try to keep all the bending in the distance between these two things, right? So none of it's pulling on the bridge or the nut. You want to do all the bending between thumb and forefinger, and you can put quite a lot of force into that, and it doesn't stress the anchor points, and you're trying to avoid that. On any guitar, whether it's this headless bridge or not, you don't want to be stressing the strings over the bridge anchor points, because that's when they'll break. Okay, so this is my first tuning point. Now I'm going to, let's see if I can find you one of these little knobs that I had made. I don't know if I had one. If I haven't got one, I could you want to make, oh, here's one. Okay, here's one. You can have this one. Just if you're going out gigging, you can put this on your in your kit box. Let's make sure this one's correctly magnetic. Yeah. Okay. So I made these in some of the other ones, and my own ones. I put them in a little recess in the side with a magnet built in, but I didn't on this one because I wasn't sure any customer would actually want that. So if I just pop that inside, so I'm going to use this to do my tuning. I'm going to use a note off the machine here. Okay, for my A. Okay. So that's the first quick tune-up. Okay, but what I would recommend is you get down there and stretch it again. Right, this time spent doing this is irreplaceable. There's no other way you're going to get your guitar to stay in tune, no matter what type of guitar it is, no matter what type of tuners it's got on or what type of strings. This is the most important part, and if you have a regular nut guitar, then including this one, I mean, I've made sure that the nut slots on this are free running anyway, but you need to check those things, and once you've got all the slack out of here, it'll eventually stop detuning. So then what I would typically do is I would do some more stretching, careful stretching, and then I would do a little bit more bending until I got every bit of slack out of this. And maybe that took 20 minutes, or it would take 20 minutes before I hung it up or went and played or whatever. But I wouldn't have to do it again for a long time. That one's set. Close now. A couple of the couple of the strings were losing a bit more tune than the others. I'm not such a good tens player, me. Getting all of that bend out there. We're pretty much there. I did all that bending and nothing changed, so you'd only need a small amount of tuning up now to get it to go. now what I haven't checked on this is where we are in terms of the playing action. It's got 10s on, so it might have just altered a little bit. Okay, that's just a little fraction higher. So if you were, this is a little detail, if you were going to make adjustments to the action, there are 2 screws, or 2 little grub screws you have to pay attention to. The first one is a locking one, and that's always the one closest to you if the headstock's down there. So you can undo that one. Okay, now you can either do as I do and use one for unlocking and another one, which has now disappeared, for the easy turning, like that one. And then the one further away on each saddle is the height, the action height. And sometimes if you take it down or you pull it out a little bit, you might need to just press down a tiny fraction to get the height where you want it. Actually, that's about where I want it. So yeah, so that's your action adjustment if you ever want to do it. It's now currently set down at its lowest. If you wanted it any lower than that, and that's about 1.575, something like that. It's not a bad playing action, and it's got a little bit of neck relief, probably about 0.3, something like that, of a millimetre. Nicely in tune still, not. I think I just lowered this one fractionally, that's why. Yeah, so if you actually wanted it any lower than this, then you would probably need to shim the neck very slightly, and I'm not sure I'd want to do that particularly. I think it plays pretty well the way it is. That's how I designed it anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tighten up the locking part when I'm at the action I want, which is the one nearest me, and I just tighten it in until I'm happy where it is, and that's locked down. And then we can go through a few more little stretches. Often you'll find on a guitar like this anyway, is that the low strings will hold the most slack of any. We're pretty much stabilised on the high ones at the moment, and then we just do the last couple of tweaks. That one's good. Okay, so that's how you change the strings and tune up using this guitar and bridge. And yeah, like I say, it's once you've got to stretch out your strings like in any guitar, you will enjoy nice tuning, easy, stable tuning, and it really won't move in the whole time you play it. But it is like any guitar. The secret I found out when I started doing this is to stretch those strings until there's no more detuning possible, and then it will play. If you don't do that, it'll let the tuning go throughout the months, even years, when you're playing it. Okay, so sorry it took longer than I started out. I will check it over tomorrow before packing them both up tomorrow night and getting ready to travel. Alright, thanks for watching.